In this episode, we're going to be wrapping this Porsche 911 Carrera S with the Aero package in supergloss Nardo gray, including the door jambs. Now that the car has been washed, Josh begins to disassemble, while Owen begins to wrap the front fender by first applying shield guard to protect the wrap against scratches, and then slowly squeegeeing the air out, avoiding wrinkles along the way. Here, he lifts the material to release the tension, allowing for the material to be laid with minimal stretch. Now that the fender's done, Josh removes the door, allowing us to access the door jamb. Owen moves on to the hood, keeping the liner on the material, allowing for the distribution of stretch to be made evenly. Since this supergloss material is a fair amount thicker than your average film, we implement different techniques to install properly. Moving on to the door jamb prior to installing the quarter panel. Here you see one seamless quarter panel being laid, including the rocker panel up and above the A-pillar. Taking the time as always to shrink our edges to avoid pullback over time. When done correctly, you cannot see the seam from the quarter panel to the door jamb. Moving on to the roof, we lay a tension line down the middle of the film before we squeegee a U-shaped pattern simultaneously in order to distribute the stretch evenly. Before doing any panel, it's critical to prep it properly. Here we use a clay bar and a degreaser before we lay our bulk piece. A look at the material before it's stretched on. As you see here, we work together to stretch and glass the material before we squeegee it out. With these thicker supergloss films, it does take quite a bit of muscle to stretch the material across the panel. That's why it's so important to shrink it back to 0% stretch before making your final cut. Now that the material's been stretched or glassed across the panel, we take the time to squeegee before tucking and cutting. With a bright color paint, it's critical to tuck properly to get full coverage. Before heading home for the day, we take factory Porsche lettering and make decals. This is going to go underneath the clear coat after we paint the calipers yellow. Love the way they turned out. The yellow pops against this Nardo gray. You can see just how daunting of a task it would be to squeegee out the material without it being stretched or glassed across the panel. A brief time lapse captures Owen and I glassing or stretching the material across the front bumper. A close-up shows the true supergloss finish on this Nardo gray. In order not to overstretch, we feed the deepest recess first. As we round the corner on completion, Josh begins to reinstall the door, and then Owen and I begin to squeegee the door out using the U-shaped pattern. Now that the material is squeegeed on, we begin the finishing process. We cut and shrink our edges. Josh begins to reinstall components. Here, he puts the belt moldings back on. Then it's on to the mirrors, fishing the wire through before plugging everything back in. As you can see, many components come off to give us access to the mirror bolts, all to avoid a 1-inch seam above the base of the mirror. Before we finish, we polish the wrap before applying a ceramic coat. We make sure to crosshatch so we get a smooth, even coverage throughout the entire surface of the wrap. And here you have it, Porsche 911 Carrera S, fully wrapped in supergloss Nardo gray, including door jambs. You can see after the polish and the ceramic coat, the supergloss finish shines like paint. In next week's episode, we're going to be wrapping this GTR 35 in a Nosatex supergloss metallic spectrum. Really happy with the way it turned out, and it goes great with the lime green calipers. As usual, a lot went into making this one happen. Make sure to check it out next week.